So today uh, we're going to discuss about the concepts of programming languages. So these are the topics we will try to cover uh, till the end of the class. Reasons for studying concepts of programming languages, programming domains, language evaluation criteria, influences on language design, language categories, language design trade-offs, implementation methods, programming environments. Yeah, coming to reasons for studying concepts of programming languages. So why do you want to learn programming language? Basically, you see you want to communicate with someone. You need some kind of language in real life as well, rather, right? So probably you may choose English, Telugu, Urdu, Hindi, some kind of language because to express your ideas, to express your feelings, to express your requirement, your desire, and your observation, your all this. You need some kind of language, rather, right? So with the help of language, you're going to express your ideas, express your feelings, everything. Similarly, if you want to get any particular task executed through a machine, you need to communicate with the machine, right? So how are we going to communicate with the machine? We need a kind of language. If we are saying it as a programming language, because we are going to program with certain set of instructions to carry out a particular task, right? So, and of course, this will improve um, your ability to choose the appropriate languages for a particular task. And then you have a lot of different tasks that are being carried out nowadays with the help of computers, right? Uh, you have scientific applications and business applications, or you have, you know, avionic applications, or defense applications, military applications, academic, or railways, or networking, automation, a lot of domains now, artificial intelligence, or machine learning. So all of domains you have now available, rather, right? So, for example, you want to implement some kind of task, rather, right? You want to, let us say, for example, monitor the people who are, mm, visiting your campus, and you want to identify a person, uh, you know, uh, and to ensure that whether he is wearing the mask, you know, or um, or not, rather, or is he having some kind of disease, like, for example, um, temperature having a little high compared to normal and all. So let us say you want to automate, this kind of system. Then what kind of programming language you require? What kind of devices you require? So, if you have the programming language knowledge, if you study the different programming languages that are being offered, over the years, and for different domains with different trade-offs, right? And with the help of different language evaluation criteria, you will be able to choose. You will be able to, identify that which awareness or programming knowledge can be suitable enough for my application, for my task, right? And it will increase the ability to learn new languages. Probably when you have the knowledge of programming language, then it will give you, it will motivate you. It will motivate you to learn a new language, right? If you have the idea of C, then probably it will motivate you to learn C++, right? Similarly, if you have learned few languages, or you have understanding of some web scripting language, then it will motivate you to learn Python or PHP or ActionScript, VBScript. So it means it will increase the ability to learn new languages, and provide you the better understanding of significance of implementation. Basically, while you are implementing the programming languages, you have different ways in which you're going to implement the programming languages. Compilation, implementation, you have interpretation implementation, you have hybrid implementation. different kind of implementations we have. Then you understand the difference between the compiled implementation, interpreted implementation. Like for example, see, you take ADA, COBOL, or any other languages which are being implemented with the help of compiled kind of thing. You will observe certain differences when you see it with the languages which are being implemented with interpreted. Like for example, all scripting languages are interpreted languages. All HTML, you have DHTML, you have what do you call PHP or Python or script, Bourne shell or Corn shell, or all shell languages are Lisp programming. These are some of the interpreted languages. So you can see the difference when you see the way in which these languages are being implemented. You can see the difference based on which you can probably identify which language will be suitable enough for you to implement your task, right? What way probably you want your task to be implemented. For that, what could be the best suitable option for me? And you understand better the implementation strategies of the different languages. You have hybrid implementation where you have the implementation process of both compiled and as well the interpreted. Like for example, Java. Java is a compiled and interpreted language, right? It's a hybrid kind of thing. Right? So you will, when you probably have the idea or studied the programming languages, you will understand the implementation strategies. Then you will understand the differences. How the compiled languages are going to differ from interpreted languages. Like for example, compiled languages are fast enough from the execution point of view when you see it, when you compare it with the interpreted languages, because the whole code will be sent to the machine at once for the execution, whereas in interpreted languages, execution is going to be line by line, right? Because this code which is going to be sent to the machine is line by line. Because it checks during the runtime as well, every line before being sent to the machine. Whereas in at the compilation stage only, it checks and ensure that all the statements are with the proper syntax. And if there are any errors, it will raise during that time. So once it is done with the machine code generated after the compilation, it will send the entire code to the machine for the execution, right? So that is the reason why you find this is faster enough with interpreted language. But there is another difference that you find when you combine interpreted language. Interpreted languages are more strongly tied, you can say, right? It is more reliable. Reliability is one of the feature to evaluate the language criteria, right? Because you have two-time checking. You check the code before you send it for execution to the machine during the runtime. You have two-time checking, compile and rather runtime. So you can see that the interpreted languages are more strongly typed, and they are tightly coupled, and they are error-free, they are robust, they are reliable compared to compiled languages. You can say that, right? But then, by looking at the differences, you can probably get an idea of what kind of language is suitable for my kind of application. That way, you can probably choose. And overall advancement of computing as well. Probably, you will study. How the computing process will take place in different programming language. You have different programming constructs in every programming language. Like we have discussed in the last class, data types and operators. These are the two primitive programming constructs that every programming language should offer. You start learning by knowing and adapting these features, how to use and how only to move ahead and language. Going to write a program, understand the programming language. But in addition to this, you have a lot of other programming concepts, like you have the control statements, you will have arrays, structures, records, Pascal we call it as records, like what you call it as structure in C language. Variant records, like you call union in C. You have, then functions, procedures, subroutines, subprogram. This is, these are the words which are being intermittently being used in some different languages. The terminology is being different in the same kind of programming construct being used from one language to another language, right? So then you can see you find classes, you find objects, you find different kind of programming constructs. When you come to object-oriented programming language, you find inheritance, polymorphism, and operator overloading, function overloading, method overloading. These all kind of things. So anyway, when you probably see the when you understand, when you learn, when you study the concept of programming language, you find the computing power from one language to another language, how it differs and how best enough for me to set up for my application to be to use it rather, right? And how is it suitable for me to use it and that kind of thing, right? Now we just look at briefly, what are the different programming domains that are available across, the entire programming language stack, right? You find scientific applications, right? Domain where scientific applications includes, probably if you're working with space applications, supercomputers, or you're working with, long range weather forecasting, image diagnosis, or let us say trying to predict the cyclone kind of thing, or earthquake and all kind of things. So these are the things in the scientific applications where you need where you have large amount of data basically, and the data which is very rapidly generated in almost no time, and where the computations are required at a very faster rate. So in such kind of situations, what kind of languages are suitable? Like for example, if you see before 1970s, until the C language came into being, there were different kind of languages were being available for different kind of applications, like mostly Fortran, formula translation. Fortran stands for formula translation, because in scientific domain, you probably find Ranjakuta method. Some programs that you probably may have executed from academic point of view. If you see probably Gauss-Jordan method, or Ranjakuta method, or numerical methods, where you find most of the formulas, and you have mathematical things. Most of the mathematical equations are scientific things which can be easily implemented with Fortran, because Fortran was designed by keeping in view of the scientific applications or engineering applications. Similarly, we have business applications, right? In business, you may have seen that in business transactions, banking transactions, insurance transactions, or you find any shop where you go to purchase something, where you find purchase order, an invoice, you find, generally, I just give an example. For example, I want to purchase some, let us say, a TV, then in a bulk, order. And what do? I first try to find the quotations. I do some kind of survey that these LCD or LED TVs are available across the market. What kind of brands are available, what is the pricing, what are the features that they are offering. I do some kind of survey first, right? Then I'll land up at some kind of stage that I have to buy this company because this is a branded one, and this is providing me AIT features, or remote logistics and all. Then I land up with some brand, because after having surveyed across the different kind of TVs, I have landed up with some. Then I think there are competitive brands in addition to this brand as well, which are offering the same kind of feature. Then there may be some kind of pricing differences. Then what I do is I'll try to find out the quotations from these different brands which are offering the same kind of feature which I probably need. Then what I do, I then negotiate with these brands whether they can come to my price. If I could see that if some of the brands could come to my price, then I put an order, it's a purchase order. Then I purchase the same from the company. For that, before being purchased, I need to probably release the purchase order with some kind of sometimes with some kind of token amount if required probably. Then what happens? They are going to prepare the shipping. Then they will ship it. You may have you may be experiencing this all because you are now purchasing through online like Amazon or Flipkart, and you may have seen the different kind of steps that are required to be followed in order to purchase a commodity from this online shopping and all, right? You may have already seen. You have to first get registered, you have to put your number, and then you will see all what kind of like for example, if I'm going for a LED purchase, then what kind of brands are, and they list out all the features and all. I can probably do entire survey on the app itself. But in general, when I probably have to do it manually, this is how I do it, right? I get the quotations from all different companies and land up with my required price, and then I release a purchase order, then probably by giving some kind of token amount, I tell them to deliver that required goods that are required at my specified address. So by providing the shipping address, when I receive that commodity at my home or that particular order, what I do, I then probably work with it and then I see whether it is working properly or not. After observation of about a week or before that, rather, right, and I release the complete payment to that particular company, right? So this is phases. I mean, the different kind of steps that are required to be carried out in order to purchase a particular commodity manually. And just showing you, this is a kind of process. So this entire process you can automate with the help of a program. That is what people thought around 1950s. Because 1950s, before 1950s, there were no business language actually, because computers were being used only at universities by academicians or at defense laboratories or military and all by the scientists and all, by US or developed countries rather, right? So before that, there was no computer usage in the market. It was not provided to the end user, right? So when they thought, we should, allow the computers to be used by the end user, then they thought, how can the computers can be made available to the end user or a person who does not know about the computer terminology or computer understanding. Then they thought, we should go with some kind of high-level language from the user's point of view. We should think, and then we should be able to have some kind of programming languages which can, allow the users to communicate with the machine in his own language, right? Then actually the high-level language era started. But otherwise, before that, you can see all low-level languages, machine-level languages were being available, right? Because they were being used only by the computer experts, academicians or scientists. So they already acquainted with the machine language, right? Really, talking about the machine, when I say it's a CPU, basically, right? CPU is the brain of the computer, or you have learned in probably first year when block diagram computer taught by your teacher, right? So the CPU, from CPU point of view, only when I talk, it's a language rather, right? So CPU.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry for the disturbance, but I can't hear you properly, sir. It's very disturbing. Your voice is very disturbing.
Voice is disturbing. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll switch off the fan. Can you now? My voice is audible now.
Yes, sir. Now it's better.
Okay, fine. So, yeah, high-level language era started after the 1950s. Basically, the U.S. Defense, we say DARPA, is a basically an organization. They have, requested set of teams to come up with their, language, high-level language. There were a lot of versions have come up with different people, different teams like Codasil and Aaron. Then they have landed up with COBOL, Common Business Oriented. Now, this is one of the first high-level language, of course, rather, right? So, for business applications, COBOL was being used at the time, and artificial intelligence, as I said, it is not a new topic. It was there before, as well. And as I said, in 1970s, it was at very peak, rather, right? So the kind of languages which were being used in artificial intelligence at that time, like Lisp programming and logical programming, Prolog. But of course, nowadays Python, R, and many other languages are available, rather, right? Then system programming basically when you are developing some compilers, assemblers, linkers, loaders, or operating systems, that is said to be the system programming. This is another domain where we can probably, that time people were using. Of course, there were some for system programs. For example, if you have 8086 processor, so there was a machine language which is specified to that particular, 8086 processor, 8085 processor. It's a 8251 processor. And then we got 80186, 286, 386, 486, 586. 586 is set to be the Pentium machine. Then we got Pentium 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we got I series now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. With generations, we got 1, 2, 3, and all kind of thing. Of course, these are all, the processor point of view, the development that took place in here. But before, if you see 186 and all, the processes were being developed using the machine language, they were machine specific, rather, right? But then after, C came into being, you can see, right? C was actually developed as a high-level language, but its structure was quite close to the machine because it was being used to develop the Unix, and Unix was developed in C. So there is a kind of what do you call very good intimacy between the Unix and C, rather, right? So that's how C has become popular for system programming also. So many of the compiler for C++, you see, C is being used for Java compiler is being written in C++. VB compiler is written in C++. So you can see many of the languages nowadays you find are the operating systems which are being now written are using the C++ kind of thing. So for system programming, C is a better option. Or C++, an increment of C, of course, right? Web software is another kind of domain which we can talk about, rather, right? So web software, basically after internet came into being, right? Before internet, there was intranet, which is developed by ARPANET. Of course, this is one of the defense agency of US. They have developed an intranet. Intranet is within the network, rather, right? So that was developed for their own defense, systems and all. And then it clicked. So it was then extended to internet. Internet is a network of networks, rather, right? So when internet came into being, then people thought we should have some specific languages, which are quite handy for the internet, rather, right? So then internet languages came up, rather, right? So for static pages, for dynamic pages, for doing initially there were only websites. Then it has been transformed into portals after search engines came into being, like Yahoo search engine. You got a lot of Bing, Google. Google is the one without which we can't live nowadays, rather, right? Google is developed as a search engine, rather, right? Now you can see you can search everything through Google. Of course, there are many of such engines, of such kind of search engines before that it was available, but how Google have transformed, the others could not have transformed. bringing all users and other kind of applications. Searches are also at a fingertip without making the user to wait for even a minute. It can probably provide you all relevant kind of thing. But anyway, what kind of algorithms are running behind? There's a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of data structure algorithms are running behind, a lot of programs are running behind to provide you all such kind of things. Right. So this is all came into being after the internet came into being, right? So then the languages, people have thought we should have specific languages for example Java. How Java has been evolved, of course the James Gosling is the founder of Java language, who have invented in Java Island, so he named it after Java. Java language, if you probably look at the history of Java language, it was basically invented keeping in view of internet rather, right? So how, what kind of features we need to offer on internet, and the users of internet, what they probably need. So keeping in view of, and what kind of transactions we can probably carry out through internet. Now you can see everything is being carried out through internet rather, right? Whether it is academic, whether it is business, whether it is avionic, whether it is controlling automated systems, whether it is machine intelligence, whether it is robotics or blockchain. You talk about any application without internet, there is no application at all rather, right? So Java is one of such kind of first language, which was basically invented by keeping in view of, internet, of course. Okay, so of course, in addition to Java, we have PHP, hypertext preprocessor, which is being used at the server side, because on internet you have different kind of architectures are available. You have two-tier architecture you start with, you have three-tier, you have n-tier architecture, right? So now when you probably talk about today's scenario, it's n-tier architecture, right? So where you have client is the user, end user, client is the one who I am using, right? Is the end user. He is one tier. Then you have a lot of tiers in between until you reach the server, rather, right? You have application server, you have transaction server, you have the database server. So you have a lot of servers in between. So every server is considered to be a tier here, right? So it's an entire architecture, I can say, right? So how you are going to interact with all these in between until you reach your required server and get your requested being processed by it, and you get your required data. This is all being done at fingertips because of the communication or the internet speed that you have is at a very high speed. We got 20 Mbps, 100 Mbps speed. What do you mean by it? 100 Mbps means 100 megabits per second. Data is going to be transferred across your channel, across your optical fiber. After the advancements that took place in communication and networking, this all been made possible, right? Anyway, so these are the different domains. So I can largely classify the entire domains of the programming languages. Scientific domain, business domain, artificial intelligence domain. In addition to this, we have more domains as well are coming up. Of course, we can but then they will be classified under any one of these as a subdomain rather, right? Language evaluation criteria. How do you evaluate the language, right? These are the basic criteria which is being used to evaluate any language to say that is a good one, or best one, or suitable one, or efficient one, and all kind of thing. So some of the features that, of course, in addition to this, there are many other features, probably portability, generality, and orthogonality. There are a lot of other features. But then these are some of the basic features that everybody probably have to get when he is using programming language, right? Readability. When you cannot read any program, you cannot understand, right? So readability must be there. It should be more clarified. If it is in, say, coding kind of thing, because at the end, if you see on the machine, how the code is going to be interpreted in the form of bits. But if the same bits if I am using to write the program, can I able to understand, right? See, when I write a program in C language, you have learned already C language. You write in, high level only. You say, for example, you want to declare an integer variable. How do you declare int space a, right? So with the help of that statement, I can understand that a is being declared as an integer variable. But actually, the statement, when it's being interpreted on the machine, how is it being interpreted? It will be converted into the machine code. There is a compiler in between who is going to translate my high-level code on the high-level code into the low-level code and then interpret on the machine, right? So when machine gets the data, it's going to be in the form of binary, right? Binary, because our machine understands the binary system, right? The entire computer is based on the binary system, rather. Binary system consists of how many digits? Only 2 digits, 0 and 1. So if I probably write the program using the binary number system, then can anybody else is going to understand what I have written? No. So readability has to be there. Otherwise, the program cannot be read. When it cannot be read, it cannot be understood, rather, right? So readability is one of the important feature of any programming language, which you can evaluate its efficiency, its potential, its strength, its ability, and all. The next is the writability. It is a measure of how easily a language can be used to create a program for a chosen problem domain, rather, right? So the ease with which a language can be used to create a program, the other way around, I can say, right? When I read and when I understand, only then I can write, rather, right? And that when you write, I can measure that, this program carries this kind of thing, that it carries some kind of instruction, this instruction is going to do this thing, this instruction is going to do this thing, and all kind of thing. I can understand only then, rather, right? So similarly, reliability is another important feature, right? Which conforms to the specifications. The other way around, I can say, when I write some statement and I am expecting that this particular statement is going to do this kind of thing, but when it can be properly executed, as per the norms, and this machine could able to take it as what I am thinking about it and could able to execute and then give me that what I was expecting, only then I can say my statements are conformed, right? My specifications are conformed. Okay, if some kind of error is raised, some exception is raised when that statement was being executed by the machine, then what do you say? It is not conformed, because when it has resulted with some kind of error, by the machine could not able to understand. Then what it does, when it could not understand, it just says an error, right? It will just raise an exception. So when it raises an exception, it means that I am not able to understand, I can't execute this. So it means your statement will not be executed, rather than, right? So when it is error-free, when your code is error-free, and when it can be easily interpretable on the machine, when it can be easily understood by the machine, when it can be able to execute your instruction, only then you can say your program is executed, your specification is conformed, and you have executed your program. So reliability. Reliability is a term which measures this conformance to the specification. Fine. Another one is the cost. At the same time, you need to see that what is the cost being incurred to write a program using the programming language. If the programming language is complex enough, and let us say it is cost enough, and if it is complex enough to understand, then I need to provide the training for which I need to invest on the trainers and have to provide the required software. If it is a proprietary software, then I have to purchase it from the respective vendor. If it is costly, then I have to not only invest on purchasing it, rather I have to invest on training my staff to understand the program, to understand the programming language, right? And then I need to ensure that if that could be executed properly by my staff to get my required task to be carried out and all. So I need to calculate the entire cost, which probably incurred for carrying out my task by using the programming language. If nowadays we got all free source and open source software where you're not to invest on purchasing that software. This is different scenario. Today's scenario is different, but I'm talking about the scenario when just the programming languages were just started and they were proprietary that time, right? Proprietary are nothing but the right owners of the company, the vendor who have invented. He is the right owner. So if you want to use it, you need to purchase a license from the same guy, right? And then you have to use it, for which you have to invest. So that is going to be the cost. So these are the four criteria, so the basic four criteria using which you can evaluate the language, right? Readability, writability, reliability, and cost, right? When you can read only, then you can understand. When you can understand only, then you can write the program. When you can write the program, I can measure the program. And when it is executed, when my instructions are confirmed, I can say, yes, I have got the result, right? Because after I write the program, what is it I need? I need the result out of it, rather, right? So when it is reliable only, then I can be able to expect the result. And this all should be happen under my estimated cost. Right? So the same is here explained with the further slides. Of course, in addition to that, I have portability, as I said, generality. Portability is carrying the code from one particular platform to another platform. Like for example, C language, if you take, it is portable, right? Irrespective of the IDE frames or operating systems or machines or processors, you can be able to easily carry out the same syntax and you can execute, right? And this portability has been extended to very great level in the languages that we are now using, like for example Java, Python, and all kind of thing, right? Where this portability is extended to machine neutral, zero architecture, and machine independent and all kind of thing, right? Generally, it should be applicable to more kind of applications, right? Like for example, before C, if you look at all the languages were application specific. Like for example, Fortran was developed keeping in view of scientific and engineering applications. So it is only being used for scientific and engineering application. If I want to implement, let us say, business application through Fortran, I can't use it. Then for business application, I was having COBOL. Similarly, for avionic application, I was having Pascal. Right, like that, for different kind of applications, different kind of languages were being available before C came into being. And if you look at, the C invention is started behind this particular strategy only, keeping in view of, a language should be invented which can be applicable for all kind of applications, right? Because if, for example, a person is working in some domain, like for example, let us say a person who is working in commercial domain or business domain wants to shift into the scientific domain, the language which is being used at the scientific domain is entirely different. He not only have to get acquainted with the domain, but rather he has to get acquainted with the entire language and its programming construction language being used at that particular domain, rather, right? So, which is a quite tedious task, and probably sometimes it is very difficult for the user to shift the domain. If the same language is being used, across all the domains, then I need not to get acquainted with the language structure. At least I can straight away start programming in that particular domain as well by just acquainting with the domain requirements, right? By taking it from the perspective. And fine. So generality also has been taken as a measure, to measure the programming language efficiency after C language. Because C language was invented by keeping in view of this strategy, and it was being used for all kind of applications, right? C can be used for all kind of applications, right? And from then on, you can see all the languages which were being invented, they were all being invented by keeping in view of generality, right? Well-defined. The sentence must be well-defined. It should be understandable. It should be, more readable and understandable, rather, right? So by keeping in view of these things, Of course, the languages have to be evaluated, and criteria we can say that, right? For evaluating criteria, evaluating the languages, this rather. Now, the next topic is we said the influences. What are the influences that make the language designer to thought of and are the major resources that time are available for these language designer to think of, right? So, like for example, if you look at before C language, the languages were, as I said, application specific, and most of them were imperative kind only, right? Imperative means action oriented, right? You give some instruction, immediately it gives an output. Like probably in third year you're going to study microprocessor, so you're going to work on microprocessor kits as well, 8085, 86 kits we have. So there we're going to you're going to give an instruction. Like for example, you want to add something, you give an instruction, add A comma B, right? You get the result immediately, rather, right? So they are action oriented, imperative programming language. The MASM, or you work with MASM or 8086 machine languages, rather, right? So as I said, before C, there were more of the machine specific languages, rather, right? They were being developed from the machine's point of view. After high-level languages era started from 1950 after 1952, probably around, right after the COBOL started, we got many languages of high-level kind, rather, right? ADA, Algol, Prolog, Lisp, ML, Haskell, a lot of other languages came into being. CPL, BCPL, B. All these languages, right? So, what are the things which influences the language designer to thought of while designing the languages? Are two important things here. I'm considering two important things. One is the computer architecture. Another one is the programming methodology, right? The computer architecture. Most of the popular languages of the past, 45 years have been designed around the prevalent computer architecture called the von Neumann architecture, right? So von Neumann is the person who developed the first of the state-of-art kind architecture, rather, right? But otherwise, what happened? There was no systematic, there was no specific, there was no standardized architecture available before von Neumann, right? You may have studied, of course, the von Neumann architecture before in first year. This is how you can see the block diagram of computer, which you have studied in the first year, is what the von Neumann architecture based on, right? So von Neumann architecture, if you look at here, you can see, you find, there is a CPU which consists of arithmetic logic unit, and you have a control unit, and there is a memory. So all the data and program both are going to be stored in this memory. The stored program organization concept first started with the von Neumann architecture, right? So otherwise, before that, as I said, you have to give some data, process it, and give it immediately as an output, rather, right? So there was no set of programs to be stored at once at a place like memory here, right? And then the program can be fed to the machine one after the other, and then it executes the whole together, then produces the output, right? That was that there was no such kind of architecture before von Neumann, rather, right? To provide the output at once by taking all the inputs one after the other, right? From the memory, from the stored, from the stored place, rather, right? So this is the von Neumann architecture, which has given the basis for the subsequent architectures. You have got many architectures after that, right? As I told you that some of them 8085, 86, 51, 186, 286, 386. We got Pentiums 1, 2, 3 RH series, and you got dual core, quad core, hexa core. You got octa-core. Now you can see the mobiles that you probably purchased. You see octa-core processors. Now most of the development, most of the inventions, most of the innovations are happening on the mobile and laptops. Desktops are almost like obsolete, right? They are outdated now because nobody is using. Because it is, what do you call, your laptop is very portable, easy to carry from one place to another. So most of the development either are taking place on the laptop or on the mobile, because even mobiles are being used for by most of the business people and of course academician, everybody rather, right? To most of you are viewing this conference or my lecture through mobile, I think rather, right? So mobile has become more handy rather, right? Where you have an operating system running behind, like most of it maybe Android based or iOS based or Apple, if it is, right? Microsoft, if it is Microsoft based. So some kind of operating system running behind and then providing you. So this kind of development took place, of course, lot of development took place, right? And you can see the laptop or, but you can see all these architectures that are available, right? They come from the root of this von Neumann architecture, right? These languages are called imperative language. The languages which were being, initially on a machine like von Neumann architecture were being used are said to be the imperative languages, right? In von Neumann architecture, you find both data and program stored in the same memory, right? This is the same memory where the data and program. Program is nothing instead of instruction. Right? CPU is separated from the memory, right? Therefore, the instruction and data are piped and transmitted from the memory to the CPU one after the other, but it produces the output at the end, right? So this is one thing which influences the language designer while designing the language. Another criteria which influences the language designer is the programming methodology, right? The late 1960s and early 1970s brought in intense analysis begun by structured programming movement, right? Before this, of course, unstructured programming languages were available. Of course, C is a structured programming language. It came after 1970. In 1972, it was invented by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Laboratories, as a part of his assignment, of course, right? In 1970s and of late, new software development methodologies emerged as a result of research we call as top-down design and stepwise refinement. C is a top-down design based. Of course, you have bottom-up approach design as well. Like for example, C++ is based on bottom-up approach, right? In most of the data-oriented languages are object-oriented languages are said to be the bottom-up approach based, right? In late 1970s, a shift from procedure-oriented to data-oriented started, right? After John Stroustrup, who invented C++? John Stroustrup, right? He invented somewhere around between early 1980s, I can say rather, right? So from then you can see a shift has happened from procedure-oriented to object-oriented, right? So data-oriented design emphasizes on use of abstract data types to solve the problems. Because class, you probably see, you find classes are objects in object-oriented programming languages, rather, right? So which are based, which is nothing but an abstract data type, right? When you say the data type is an abstract, which hides the non-essential details and the implementation details from the user, rather, right? When you can say class consists of the functions and the data wrapped in a single entity called class, right? So this both together have been wrapped up, right? You don't know what is there. You can just access whatever you require just by creating an object and calling its member with the help of a membership operator, right? The latest step in the evolution of data-oriented software development, which began in early 1980s in object-oriented design. It begins with data abstraction, which encapsulated processing with data objects and hide access to data and adds inheritance and dynamic method binding inheritance is a powerful concept, of course, that greatly enhances the potential use of the existing software. And dynamic method binding allows more flexible use of inheritance. Right? Procedure-oriented method also have enjoyed a great deal in recent years with concurrency and all kind of thing. For example, Java and all that kind of thing. Right? So these are the two criteria: computer architecture and programming methodologies, which influences the language designer while designing the language. So, as I said, now after the 1970s, a shift happened from procedure oriented to what do you call data oriented or to object oriented, right? Before 1970s, if you see, they're all unstructured programming languages. After 1970s, you can see structured or procedure oriented kind of languages came into being, like C and all kind of thing, right? So we'll stop here our lecture, and we'll probably see the subsequent slides in the next session. But here I would like to